The energy on set was electric as Will Smith made his entrance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, fresh off a new streaming release and surrounded by public curiosity following his Oscars controversy. Will stepped on stage with a confident smile, drawing cheers from the crowd. Colbert greeted him warmly, the two men shaking hands and exchanging early banter that seemed relaxed and full of mutual respect. The conversation opened with light-hearted jabs and talk about Will's latest role. The audience was hooked, laughing at Will's impressions and clapping at Colbert's quick wit. Everything seemed in place for a memorable and entertaining segment, but as the conversation drifted into deeper waters, Colbert decided to go off script. That's when the shift began, as slow at first, but undeniable. Colbert leaned forward slightly, adopting a more serious tone, and asked, "So Will, let's talk about the slop. Do you think you've truly made peace with what happened at the Oscars?" The question landed like a brick in the studio. Will's smile flickered for a second, and he responded with a tight nod. "I've spoken on that," he said, choosing his words carefully. But Colbert, perhaps sensing an opportunity for a viral moment, pressed it again. "But do you think Chris Rock has forgiven you? Do you think America has?" The tone of the room shifted. The audience, sensing the tension, quieted. Will's jaw clenched visibly as he replied, "Stephen, I didn't come here to relive that moment. I came here to talk about my work." That should have been the end of Ida, but it wasn't. Instead of backing down, Colbert smiled and said, "But the world hasn't forgotten. Don't you think it's part of your story now?" Will blinked slowly, the heat behind his eyes unmistakable. "Man," he said, his voice low, "if you want to talk about redemption, fine, but don't come at me like this is TMZ." The audience let out a nervous chuckle, unsure whether this was still banter or something more serious. Colbert tried to soften the blow with a joke. "Come on, Will, this isn't TMZ, it's CBS, we just have better lighting." But the line didn't land. Will leaned forward, visibly irritated, and said, "This isn't a joke to me. You don't know what it's like to live with the fallout of one moment being turned into a meme for the world to mock." At this point, the control room reportedly began signaling Colbert to shift topics, but perhaps driven by ego, curiosity, or just poor judgment, Stephen tried one last angle. "Sure, but as a public figure, don't you have a responsibility to address these things openly?" That was the final straw. Will stood up, adjusted his mic, and said into the camera, "I've addressed it. I apologized publicly, privately, and emotionally. And if you still want to define me by that moment, then you're the one not moving on." The audience let out a stunned gasp. Colbert looked flustered, trying to maintain his composure. Okay, I will move on," he mumbled, clearly losing control of the segment. But Will was already halfway to the edge of the set. Without waiting for a cue or a commercial break, Will removed his earpiece and said, "I don't have time for disrespect disguised as journalism." The studio fell into an awkward silence. Colbert attempted to salvage the moment, offering, "Will, please see, we didn't mean to disrespect you. It's just part of the conversation." But Will shook his head, turned to the audience, and said, "Thanks for the love, y'all, but I'm not staying where I'm being cornered." And just like that, he exited the stage. Security and producers moved quickly behind the scenes, but the damage was done. Colbert sat frozen for a moment before half-heartedly saying, "Well, that was unexpected." Let's roll the clip from his movie anyway. Clearly unsure how to proceed, the moment instantly exploded across social media. Clips were uploaded within minutes, and hashtags like #WillWalks, #ColbertClash, and #RespectWill trended globally. Viewers were split as some believed Will was justified in defending his boundaries, while others accused him of being too sensitive for public life. Celebrities chimed in on both sides, with some defending Will's right to avoid repetitive scrutiny, while others argued that accountability comes with fame. Regardless of where people stood, everyone agreed on one thing: this wasn't just another talk show moment. It was raw, it was real, and it peeled back the polished surface of late-night television to reveal the awkward intersection of celebrity, trauma, and media. Backstage sources revealed that Will had been assured the interview would center around his new film and personal growth journey and not his past controversies. That broken trust may have fueled his decision to leave. Insiders from the show described the moment as chaotic and unplanned, noting that Colbert withdrew from the agreed-upon script. One source said, Will made it clear beforehand he didn't want to rehash the Oscars. It was understood, but Colbert pushed anyway. And he pushed too hard. Those statements lent weight to the growing sentiment that Colbert had overstepped. Critics online and in the press began questioning whether late-night hosts were becoming too thirsty for viral confrontation at the cost of mutual respect. The following day, Colbert addressed the incident briefly. Sometimes conversations go places you don't expect. He said, I regret if I pushed too far. I have tremendous respect for Will Smith and his journey. The audience clapped, but many felt it lacked sincerity. Some fans called it damage control rather than a true apology. Will, meanwhile, made no public statements, but his actions told the story. His team quietly cancelled upcoming talk show appearances, choosing instead to promote his projects through print interviews and controlled social media rollouts. It was a clear signal. The old playbook of fame no longer worked for him. He was setting his own terms now. Despite the controversy, or perhaps because of Will's film saw a significant boost in viewership, online searches for his name surged, and debates over his walkout dominated headlines for days. Some media outlets began re-evaluating how they treat vulnerable moments in celebrities' lives. Should redemption be constantly questioned? Is it fair to demand that public figures repeatedly perform their shame and recovery for mass consumption? For Will, the answer seemed obvious. He no longer owed anyone a performance of regret. He had already done that. What he wanted was to move forward. And if that meant walking out of a major late-night show to do so, then so be it. In the end, Will Smith's walkout on Stephen Colbert didn't tarnish his reputation, it reinforced it. It showed a man no longer willing to be trapped in the narratives others created for him. It reminded viewers that accountability doesn't require enduring endless humiliation, and that healing sometimes means walking away. For Colbert, it served as a cautionary tale about the fine line between probing and provoking. And for audiences everywhere, it was a reminder that while celebrity culture often demands access and vulnerability, there are still moments where dignity must take precedence. Will Smith walked off that stage not defeated, but defined, and in doing so, he reclaimed the story for himself.